Namaskaram, Satsrikal.
Namaskar.
And that is not strictly true. Any psychiatrist will know that there is power in the mind that cannot be explained by science. I'm a man of science, but it's a rare pleasure, Satguruji. Since I came to know this, I've been looking at what you've done, which is a tremendous amount, much more than doctors do. And I'm meeting today a man of great wisdom, philosophy, and philanthropy. You've done such a huge amount
Oh,
in your own time, charitable causes that we don't do, and spirituality, of course. So we know now that COVID-19 is the mother of all pandemics. And we can predict that the Great Depression of the 1930s will be dwarfed by the economical and psychological crisis that is to come. So my question is generalized. It's around medical people, but it's much broader than that, because the challenges of our future generations are going to be both psychological and ecological, and I reckon you're a specialist in both. So how do we break the barriers of stigma or mental illness and the ignorance of global warming? You'll hear about prominent political people ignoring completely the global signs. How do you think the post-COVID world will unfold? And what can we as a person, what can I do? What can the individual do?
see, before we look at the post-COVID world, because we don't know when this virus will allow you to be post when it'll allow you to treat it as history, all right? We still don't know. So I think it's very important we look at the pre-COVID world, how we have been living. Well, if I have to… I mean, these are not things that you're not aware of, but let me put this into some kind of perspective. Every day, nearly 8,000 children die because of malnourishment. That is about nearly 3 million children below 5 years of age dying in the world every year. To feed about 820 million people who are daily go to bed on a hungry stomach, it would take only something like 9.7 to 9.8 billion dollars. But that is in a year. But we just have video games. The revenue on video games is over $100 billion in the world. And daily, the alcohol and tobacco and drugs put together is nearly as much as money that we spend on food. $3.7 trillion is the agricultural produce on the planet. 3.2 trillion is what is spent on alcohol, tobacco and psychedelic drugs. So, when this is how we've been living, well, the virus has brought stop to this, and the moment they open up the liquor vans in India, in Tamil Nadu, in a single day on 8th of May, the day they opened the liquor vans, one day's sales is 170 crores. So, nearly 30% of most of the states in India, their revenue is coming from liquor. So all the states are pitching, Chief Minister saying, first let's open the liquor vans because we don't have money. So if this is how we're living, then post-COVID we should think later. We must fix the pre-COVID, the way we've been living. What happened in 1930, if it is a consequence of World War I and followed up by the Spanish flu, which took nearly 50 million people off, fortunately, this virus is not that virulent, it's a little kind to us. If we behave responsibly, it will not touch us or it will not bother us too much. That virus, the influenza virus of 1918 was a different kind, it just killed people just like that, and most of the people who died were between 20 and 40. Here, most of the people are over 75, 80, in that range. So, it is much gentler on us we have to admit that. And our economies, our technologies, our ability to transmit things is at another level, okay? You couldn't have imagined in early 20th century that all these things would be available. That day you were fighting virus without even having an antibiotic on your hands. Today the amount of pharmaceutical formulations you have, your ability to transport things, your ability to reach people is another world. You cannot even compare that world and this world, it's a totally different world. Having said this, right now, Our fear is of economy. Definitely it's a serious thing. In India, in the last 20 years, we've pulled out over 240 million people from below poverty line to above poverty line. Above poverty line is not a great place, but it's a better place. But if this virus situation doesn't get sorted out by September, October at least, if it continues for 6 to 8 months or 12 months, then we will be pushing these 240 million people back below poverty line for sure. So that is the real issue, that is the real problem. Right now, there are 820 million people who are going hungry. That number may double. People are estimating up to 3 billion people may go hungry in the world. That's a real disaster. These are the things that we must be concerned about. At the same time, the amount of resources we have is like never before. As I said, we are playing video games for $100 billion. For 10 years, we can feed all the hungry people. If we just stop this one thing, if we save our thumbs, you know, I'm saying the resources are also like that. We are drinking and smoking away $3.2 trillion worth of resource. Well, we could transform that into something else. Will we do it or not is another question. But I'm saying, we are resource-rich like never before. We are technology-rich like never before. We are competence and science and rich and knowledge-rich like never before. Now if we can't solve the problem, I think this will be a very harsh thing to say, but in some ways, we have asked for it, we deserve it. Because don't look at the post-COVID world, please look at the pre-COVID world. How have we been living? Is it a sensible human way of living? I'm not trying to comment on people's lifestyles, it's for them to decide. But at the same time, when the crisis comes, you must be able to transform. All right, you were playing video games 6 hours a day, now there is a crisis, now you can transform. All right, you're spending half your life in the bar, now a crisis has come, you should be able to transform. Because my problem is not about what you do or you do not do. As a human being, you must live consciously. We need to create a conscious humanity, a conscious planet, because minus consciousness, we are nothing. We are not even as good as other animals because at least they're eco-friendly. We are not even that. The only big thing about us is, we go beyond our natural instincts, basic instincts of survival, and we can function consciously. This is the big thing about being a human being. If we surrender that, then what is left? What is valuable about human life? We are not in any way valuable. Ants and insects and birds are far more valuable to nature than us. We are valuable only because of our ability to be conscious. Once we surrender that, there is really no value to human existence. This is something that we must realize at this time. And if we realize this as a humanity, I don't know how much hardship should come, how many lives should go before we realize this, but if we realize this, it doesn't matter where the economy is. If humanity realizes that our ability to be conscious, our ability to go beyond our compulsive nature is the highest value of being human, then the post-COVID world is a fantastic world. If we don't realize that, all we will have is many people wiped out, many people ruined, hungry, suffering, poverty, enormous poverty across the world. This is what we will see. So, it is very important that now there is a lockdown and anyway most people don't have work. It's important that we see how we've been living in the last 50 years. In the last 50 years, 70% of the vertebrate population on the planet has been wiped out. 80% of the biomass in the world is gone. What is our plan for this world? When we are living so wantonly, so insensitively, so unconsciously, post-virus is not the thing we must look at. Pre-virus is what we need to look at.
So on that same theme, sorry Ramesh, just on this, what are the 3 top tips that we've learned pre-COVID that we need to translate into post-COVID that will change the world for us?
Well, essentially we've been living unconsciously, compulsively. Compulsiveness is ruling our way of life. If we become conscious in our existence, as individual people, as societies, as nations, and as humanity, if we function at least 10% more consciously than the way we are functioning right now, post-COVID will be a fantastic world.